That's my membership card from David Duke. I've carried it in my wallet since I got it in the mail. And at the bottom it says Knights of the Ku Klux Klan.
How did you come to infiltrate the KKK, Ron?
It's a fluke. Total fluke. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do in life, and I decided I wanted to try becoming a cop. Became the first black cadet in the history of the Colorado Springs Police Department program. I later became the first black cadet to graduate from that program and become a full-fledged police officer. From that point, I became the first police officer, black police officer, to become a detective. And I was also the youngest detective at the age of 22 years and I believe 2 months in the history of the department.
And what were you like as a young cop, age 22, 23?
I was damn good. I looked good in my uniform, if I say so myself. But I was a good cop. I was a fair cop. Undercover work was the most fun that I possibly could have had and made a living out of. It had its dangers too, but that comes with the territory. Plus, you have to be a little bit crazy to want to do stuff, to put yourself in a position where your life is in danger and the only weapon that you have at your disposal to get yourself out of that danger is your ability to communicate. A lot of people say, well, you have a gun, you can use your gun. No, you can't use your gun. Not always. You know, the gun is a tool to be used at certain times. But when you're dealing with somebody in an undercover capacity, you can't go to the gun and start shooting things up because you feel threatened by it. You talk your way in, you have to talk your way out. I was working in the intelligence division, 1978. One of the things we did was we read the newspapers every day, and we would read to see what was happening in our community, in our area, that may have an importance to us as cops that we should do some checking into. And on this one occasion, I saw an ad in one of the local Colorado Springs papers that said, Ku Klux Klan for information, and then there was a P.O. box. I figured, what the hell? I sat down and wrote a letter, a note actually, to the P.O. box, identifying myself as a white man who hated, and I quote, Nick and anybody else that isn't pure Aryan white like I am. Then I did a crucial mistake. I signed my real name to the letter. About a week or so later, I get a response in the form of a phone call from the local chapter president. He said, you're just the kind of guy we're looking for. When can we meet? And that's when I said, oh shit, how do I do this? So that's when my investigation actually started. I had to start planning on the spot how I was going to infiltrate this group and get as much information about them as I possibly could. And that's when I came up with the idea of being the voice on the phone and sending the white officer in posing as me. Chuck was my height, about my weight. He was a good undercover cop, and he became the face of Ron Stallworth for this investigation. I couldn't have pulled that investigation off without Chuck and without the second officer I got into the group, a guy by the name of James Rose. The three of us were the ones that pulled off the Black Klansman investigation.
Why was it important for you as a police officer to look into the KKK and their movement in 1970s America?
The KKK historically is a white supremacist group, probably the premier white supremacist group in the country. They came about to try to control the newly freed slaves and maintain the Southern social order of the time. They went around terrorizing these slaves. The slaves were suspicious. They had a superstitious nature about them. So the KKK dressed up in white robes, pretending to be spirits of dead Confederate soldiers. All this with the intent of striking fear into the hearts and minds of the newly freed slaves and keeping them under control. In the 1970s, they were still going around dressing up in robes. Burning crosses was one of their traditions. The burning of a cross is a terroristic act defined by the U.S. Congress. The KKK in Colorado Springs wanted to burn crosses to announce their presence. They wanted to pick the highest point in Colorado Springs where you could see it for miles and announce their presence in the city.
Can you tell me a bit about that first meeting with the members of the KKK? How did you prepare for that, and what was it like going into it?
I would send Chuck into the meetings, posing as me. He had to know exactly what I had said on the phone so that he could walk in and pick up the conversation as if it had been him. And I would listen. I would wire him up, similar to what you all did with me for this interview. And I would listen to him as he's having the face-to-face meeting so that I could get on the phone and carry it forward. So we never had a break in the action. But as I've told people over the years, these guys were not the brightest light bulbs in the socket, because if you heard Chuck, you would recognize that his voice is totally different than my voice. They should have recognized it. They didn't. They wanted to meet me at a particular bar just outside of Colorado Springs. They suggested the location. I agreed to it. And when we went to that first meeting, I wired Chuck for sound. And I sent Chuck in with the understanding that I want you to get as much information as you can. Identify as many people as you can. If they have any literature of any kind, get it. Newspapers, magazines, anything that they might be passing out. See if you can find out what their plans are. Myself and Jimmy Rose, we sat in a car listening to the conversation that Chuck had with them on the microphone. And it was then that we learned what their major plans were. They wanted all Klansmen to bring in at least 3 new Klan members so exponentially they could grow. They wanted to do this to honor David Duke, who was planning on making a visit about a month later. David Duke was the Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan. He was the big guy. Chuck came back from the meeting, met me in my office. He gave me what little literature there was, not much. And one of the things they gave him was an application form. I sat Chuck down in my office, snapped a photo of him, and then attached his photo to the application form, which I had filled out. I signed my name to it. I got the funds for a membership fee from the chief of police's office. And the very next day, I mailed it off to David Duke down in Louisiana. About a week, 2 weeks, I didn't get a response back. So I called David Duke up one day to find out where my membership card was, because I had been told that you can't participate in any cross burnings or any other Klan activities unless you have your membership card. So I called David Duke up. He answered the phone and introduced myself as Ron Stallworth, one of the new Klan members in Colorado Springs, and I don't have my card. Can you tell me what's going on? He said, hold on a minute, and I could hear the rustling of papers in the background. He said, we've had a snafu here in the office, and he said, I have your application in my hand. He said, I will personally complete your application and get your membership card in the mail. About a week later, after that phone call, that's my membership card from David Duke, issued by David Duke. It says 1865 when the Klan started to 1979. Ron Stallworth, Colorado, 78862. That supposedly was the number of Klan members, 862 members for the year 1978. I never believed that either. And at the bottom it says Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. I've carried it in my wallet since I got it in the mail. And I'm often asked, why do you carry that? I carry it because it is a memento of my police career. It's a unique memento. And I don't know of any other cop that has one, to be honest with you.
You spoke to David Duke on the phone. What was it like speaking to him in those phone conversations? What did you talk about?
David Duke was a great conversationalist. If you had him here right now talking to you, you would be fascinated. He speaks very well. He's very polished. I started calling David Duke about once every week. I'd give him a call. for no other reason, just to say, hi, David, how you doing? Or, hi, Mr. Duke. Everyone called him Mr. So I'm pretending to be a white supremacist. I called him Mr. too. So you'd compliment him and say all these wonderful things about him, and he loved it. So I would say, hi, Mr. Duke, how you doing? How are things? How's the wife and kids? And we would have conversations about everything. He talked about his wife, he talked about his children, we talked about sports, but he had one flaw, one strong character flaw. Whenever the subject of race came up, David would throw the so-called N-word, which I hate. He would throw the N-word out. He prided himself on not using those words, but he used them all the time with me, and I threw them back at him because I was pretending to be just like him. He couldn't talk about anything without the subject of race coming up, and then he would reserve. I referred to him as a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde personality. He would be Dr. Jekyll, very nice, polite, and as soon as the subject of race came up, Mr. Hyde came out. And that was when the monster in him, the beast in him would come out, very deceptive, dangerous, in fact.
And how did you feel during these conversations? What's going through your mind kind of in your undercover role, but also having to hear that hate and that white supremacy?
I get asked that a lot. I was playing a role again, keep in mind. I was acting, quote unquote. I had to talk to him in the manner in which he was communicating to me. So I had no feelings regarding it whatsoever. If anything, I was cracking up laughing at the fact that he was being made a fool of. My sergeant, my late sergeant, would sit there, who was a big, strong supporter of me in this whole investigation. He would sit in his desk listening to my end of the conversation. We didn't have a public address system in the office. But he would hear my end of the conversation, and he would be cracking up laughing, turning red in the face, and several times he literally fell down on his knees out of his head of his chair, laughing so hard at what I was saying to David Duke, and turning red in the face and choking. It was like a Saturday Night Live skit. And sometimes he was losing his breath so bad, he would run out of the office into the foyer of the detective division, and he would tell the people out there, "You'll never believe what that crazy son of a bitch is saying to David Duke." And so I would have some detectives coming into the office to listen to my end of the conversation. They would start cracking up and run out of the office laughing and everything because I'm supposed to be by myself. So we would all be cracking up laughing. Even me started laughing. And I had to catch myself, cover the phone a lot, get some chuckles out, and then get back on the phone and start talking to David Duke again. The thing was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. And all the time this was happening, we're making fools out of them. They didn't know it. You have to understand, part of the white supremacist philosophy, be it the Ku Klux Klan, Nazi party, anything, part of their philosophy is blacks, minorities, don't have the basic intelligence that white people have. They see us as nothing more than chimpanzees or gorillas. So we can't possibly be educated enough to do some of the stuff that I was doing. I took great pride in the fact that this chimp, this gorilla, this ape, was making an ass of the Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan.
And then in a kind of strange twist, I guess, you end up being asked to look after David Duke.
David came into Colorado Springs around January, I think it was, of '79. We were getting death threats. There was a lot of protest marches and meetings and whatnot going on. And there were death threats being directed at David Duke and other Klan members. Got a call one day from the chief of police's office, told to report to him. I went to his office. He said, "We got reliable reports that somebody's going to do something to this man, David Duke." He said, "I don't want anything happening to him in my city. I want you to go where he's going to be at." I said, "Chief, I'm talking to this man on the phone almost every day, every week." He said, "I'm aware of that." He said, "But I have nobody else available. You're it." see that he gets out of my city alive. I said, well, okay. So I went to where David Duke was. I introduced myself to David Duke. I said, I am a detective with the Colorado Springs Police Department. Never said my name. I said, and we are getting credible death threats against you. I said, I have been assigned to be your security for the remainder of your time in Colorado Springs. I said, now I don't agree with your philosophy or political ideology. I said, but I am a professional and I'll do everything within my power to see that you get out of my city alive. I said, Mr. Duke, no one will ever believe me when I tell them that I was your bodyguard. Would you mind taking a picture with me? He said, oh no, not at all. So I went up to David Duke, and he had, again, the Colorado Grand Dragon, the state leader, was with him, and Ken O'Dell, the chapter president in Colorado Springs, was with him. So I went up to David Duke, and I put my right arm around his shoulder. And he pushed my arm away. He said, I'm sorry, but I can't be seen in a photo with you like that. I said, I understand. Wait a minute. I walked up to Chuck, the white Ron Stallworth. I gave the Polaroid camera to Chuck. And I stood between David Duke on this side, the Colorado Grand Dragon, the state leader, on my left. And I stood there with my hands down like this. And when I gave the camera to Chuck, I said on the count, when you hear me say 3, snap the photo. So I stood like that, and I said 1, 2, 3. And on the count of 3, Chuck snapped the photo. David Duke bolted away from me and ran to Chuck to grab the photo. I was a split second faster than him. I grabbed the photo of the Polaroid as it's coming out of the camera. David Duke tried to snatch it out of my hand, and I said, if you touch me, I will arrest you for assault on a police officer. That's 5 years in prison. Don't do it. Don't do it. And he stood there, literally with egg on his face. His followers were standing there watching. Everybody got silent, their mouths hanging open. In that moment, I owned David Duke. The Ku Klux Klan was destroyed in the minds of people because their leader, their fearless leader, had no power, no authority. He looked at me for a while, then he turned around and he slunk away, proceeded to give a speech to his followers about white supremacy and this, that, and the other, and I had just destroyed his premise right there. So that was a very significant moment and a very fun moment for me.
Why did the investigation come to an end, Ron?
I sent Chuck in for another meeting. And during that meeting, Ken O'Dell, the chapter president, told Chuck he was going to move back to his home in San Antonio. And he said, we've taken a vote, we meaning the Klan members. And he told Chuck, because you have been a loyal and dedicated Klansman, the vote was unanimous. We want you to become the new leader, you, Ron Stallworth, to become the new leader of the chapter. I said, wow. We go back to the office, I'm talking to Chuck. Next day I had a meeting with the chief of police and I told the Chief, let's keep this thing going. Imagine what damage we could do to the white supremacy movement in the state of Colorado. What information we can uncover if Ron Stallworth, Chuck, is sitting at the head of the Ku Klux Klan and interacting with all the other white supremacy groups in the state and around the country. Imagine what we could do. He said, I want you to end it right now. I said, why? He said, it's gone too far. It's gone on long enough. It's gone too far. I want you to end it. Don't answer your phone anymore. Don't go to any more meetings. I want Ron Stallworth Klansman to disappear. I argued as best I could, as vehemently as I could, and the chief wasn't going to be persuaded otherwise. And then he said this to me. Don't go to any more meetings, don't talk to anybody else on the phone, and destroy all the reports that have been written. I don't want anyone to know that we have had officers in the Ku Klux Klan. I said, Chief, you sanctioned this investigation. You authorized it. We haven't done anything illegal. He said, I know, but I don't want anyone to find out. Destroy the report. I think the investigation lasted about 7 months. We prevented directly 2 cross burnings, and then they tried to talk about doing a third, and because they failed on the first 2, they said, let's just forget about it. So no minority child in particular, but no child period, ever had to wake up in Colorado Springs and look out on the horizon and see a burning cross, because we stopped it. In Colorado Springs, we identified, I think, a total of 12 members that we never knew about before that. So it was a successful investigation. When people ask me, what did you accomplish? That's what I tell them. We prevented this stuff from happening. Black Klansman is not a movie. It's a movement. Because the people that were going to the theater to watch this movie, the reaction was unbelievable. They would see it and see the ending, which was true footage of literally a homicide by the white supremacy groups in Charlottesville, Virginia, with Heather Heyer. And Spike Lee got permission from her mother to put this scene in there. And that was the ending of the movie. And people would come out of the theater in tears, seeing the whole movie, seeing how they were treating blacks, or were talking about blacks and other minorities, and then seeing that scene at the end. People were having a visceral reaction to this story, to this movie. And it made me feel good that that was happening.
A final question that actually Lemorio put forward, so would you like to ask it?
As a black man, I would like to ask, I'm now 35, I was born in 1990, and we see where we're at today, and we see where we've come from, our history in this country. Do you think that we're moving backwards, or do you think that black people should be being more aware? Or how could you speak to today's times and what you've been through and what you've experienced?
Well, when you say white supremacy making a comeback, it implies that white supremacy had gone, it left, never has gone. Goes undercover, operates in the shadows, goes underground, and then something happens, some personality appears on the scene, and it pops right back out.
You all might not know that it's something that goes on in like black culture in America. Is said that, there's always the speech that is had, especially if you have a son.
The talk.
The talk, yeah. And it's really hard. I got it myself at a young age. And it goes along the lines that, your mother or your father sit you down and they let you know the reality, the truth of your future in America. How do we continue that conversation today?
We should. We should. My son is 40 and 36. I had to talk with them a long time ago. Unfortunately, they didn't listen to me. But we should inform our young men, child, and women to let them know that this is what you're facing by virtue of your skin color. This is how America sees you. You were born like this. You are blessed with this skin color. It's a beautiful color. Don't feel any shame in it. Be proud of it. Do what you can individually to uplift the race and to educate your children to do the same. And tell them to buy my book and see the movie.
Definitely will. Definitely will.